32 days until the election. For several weeks, 12 News has been breaking down each of the races. Today, we're taking a look at the District 1 congressional race. It includes parts of North Phoenix, Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, and Carefree. A couple of weeks ago, Democratic candidate Amish Shah joined us in studio, and this afternoon we have Republican incumbent David Schweikert here. Thank you so much for being in studio with us. You've been serving in D.C. well over a decade now, since that first congressional district win back in 2010. We won't go way back then. We certainly do want to look forward. But, you know, in that time, we've consistently heard voters talking about the economy, more so lately, jobs, cost of living. So if reelected, how do you make housing more affordable? How do we bring down grocery prices?
It's actually a brilliant question. And look, I'm blessed to be number 4 in Ways and Means. And it takes a decade to get that ranking. And I also chair the Republican side of what's called the Joint Economic Committee. Now, that's all geeky, but it means you actually have some influence on trying to do crazy things like what would it take to bring more housing to market? So we're doing a whole study with our economists for legislation in the beginning of the year, saying if there's government pieces of land, how do we turn them into the next subdivision, the next community, the next place to have homes?
Right, because there's a lot of people talking about all the federal land that's available, but the problem is there's no grocery stores there. We already live in food deserts, so how do you make those places more livable once you obtain that land?
But you run into the chicken and egg problem of if we have a shortage of housing stock. And understand, it's much bigger than just traditional federal land. It's BLM land, Forest Service land. There's even Bureau of Reclamation land, state trust land. And you've heard the Vice President and others talk about the stress. But the ultimate solution is you need more homes, and we need a place to build them.
Absolutely. We do want to talk about this because we're in week 1, almost done with week 1 in October. We're flirting with 110 every single day, breaking records. So what needs to be done to keep summers from getting longer and hotter and more miserable, because no one's going to want to live here if this continues?
It's actually a brilliant question. Being an idiot, it's out there knocking on doors, and sometimes having my little kids with me, it's brutal. Particularly for those of us in the Phoenix area, we also have this additional thing they call the heat dome effect. Yes. I think it's not partisan, but we need to actually engage in some crazy technology ideas. The reflective surfaces on the roofs, air conditioners that actually dump their heat into the water heater instead of pumping it out into your neighborhood. There's actually dozens of these things that are being studied by ASU and other places.
Yeah, a lot of universities taking on the heat island effect and the non-cooling overnight.
And we should actually, and in many ways, they would actually lower our bills.
Okay, and that's what everybody wants.
And there's some new technology we think coming out on air conditioners that also could crash the price of electricity they use.
Okay, so see, we want to see some more of that, lower prices there. Also, we want to talk about, I'm glad you brought up partisan, because bipartisan work needs to be done, obviously. People are completely divided, more so even now after the recent assassination attempts on former President Donald Trump. Will civility wedge its way back into politics at some point?
It's a good question. Look, I'm blessed. If you're in Congressional District 1, you're in one of the highest educated districts in America. And I find actually the tone in this one is you have a population that wants to be treated like adults. They want to be spoken to with actual details, not platitudes. But I do see some of the dopamine hits that come through media, come through the politicians, that are feeding people, and sometimes for emotion, and sometimes to raise money, and not actually solutions.
And that is one thing we want. We want solution-based policies. I think most people would agree with that. Lastly, while I've got you here, we have a growing number of independent voters. As a Republican and the incumbent, how are you appealing to those who are undecided as we sit 32 days away from Election Day?
Look, most people don't realize independents are now the #1 registration in Arizona. And it's how I've been blessed to get reelected. We're blessed. We do well with independence.
Okay. Well, best of luck in November. And thank you for coming into studio. I know your daughter's here, and I hope that housing drops by the time she's ready to start up that mortgage. You know what I mean?
You joke. We actually talk about things like that.
We need it to happen.
To the next generation?
Exactly. The next generation sitting right here in studio.